Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan, and this is just a big story, and I want to cover it very thoroughly here. This is about the Smithfield trial against two vegan activists from Direct Action Everywhere. This has been going on since 2017, and a jury deliberated over the weekend, finding the two vegan activist defendants not guilty. And this is a big deal because you'll see what they did was not a crime that deserved up to 5.5 years of prison each. And I was about to lose all faith in humanity to see how the two defendants are being pretty much railroaded by the state, the prosecution, the corporations, all kind of working together to prosecute these two vegan activists to make an example of them, to never do anything like this, rescue two sick and dying piglets. But here's the headline. Activists acquitted in trial for taking piglets from Smithfield Foods, the nation's largest pork producer, argued that the removal of two sick and dying piglets worth nothing at all to them anymore was a case of theft and burglary, and Direct Action Everywhere called it a rescue. So we'll get into this, and I'm going to read from this article here from The Intercept. The author, Marina Boletinkova, did a fantastic job, and I just want to make sure I don't miss any big details, because this is a huge legal precedent being set here. I thought it was going to be set in a very horrible way, but turned out that common sense and reason prevailed here. And I'll give my commentary throughout this too. In fact, we talked about this on my Friday live stream back when the jury was deliberating, when it looked really bad for the defendants. But yeah, an historic trial over the 2017 removal of two sick and dying piglets from Utah's Smithfield Foods factory farm. Two animal rights activists were acquitted by a jury Saturday night on burglary and theft charges, which could have sent them to prison for 5.5 years each for removing and rescuing two sick and dying piglets, which I reiterate are worth nothing. In fact, they were a liability for Smithfield. They were not an asset for them because they were going to be killed anyway, and they wouldn't have spent any money on veterinary care for these sick and dying piglets. And the verdict is a culmination of more than 5 year pursuit that multiple agencies, get this guys, including the FBI and the Utah Attorney General's office, got into all these agencies working against two vegan activists for rescuing two sick piglets. I mean, is this an intelligent use of taxpayer funds? Anyway, it began after the activists published uncovered footage revealing gruesome conditions at Smithfield, the nation's largest pork producer. And again, forgive me if I mispronounce anyone's names here, and I should be able to get Wayne's name right here because I'm Chinese too, but I'm probably going to butcher Wayne Hisung and Paul Pickelsheimer, members of the animal rights group Direct Action Everywhere, or DXE for short, removed two sick, severely undernourished piglets from Smithfields back in March of 2017, and they named the pigs Lily and Lizzie, and brought them to receive, which they needed because they were about to die, receive veterinary care, and took them to a sanctuary for rescued farm animals in another state, Colorado. Remember, they rescued them from Utah. Later that year, the FBI chased the piglets across state lines and raided the sanctuary where these piglets were living, bringing with them veterinarians who, did this? Sliced off a piece of Lizzie's ear to perform a DNA test and confirm that she was the property of Smithfield Foods. And animals were not removed from the sanctuary, and they still live there to this day. I mean, that's horrifying. Here's actually a photograph of a state veterinarian cutting Lizzie's ear for DNA testing. Like, why did they need to DNA test if it was the same pig that Smithfield owned? It makes me wonder, like, do they own DNA of all their piglets? Anyway, so activists traveled to St. George, Utah to watch the trial, jubilant over the decision, describing it as a turning point for the animal rights movement. They just let a guy who walked into a factory farm and took two piglets out without consent of Smithfield walk out of the courtroom free. Hisung, one of the defendants, told the reporters outside the courtroom, if it can happen in southern Utah, it can happen anywhere. So here's where I kind of laugh at how much money was spent on this trial, how many resources Utah's state government used and the FBI used. Because this is not like a major crime. It's not like they stole like a Van Gogh painting or a bunch of cash. Prosecutors allege that the baby pigs, who were barely a week old when the activists removed them, were worth $42.20 each, so like $85 in total. $85. They're worth $85. That's how much they were worth to Smithfield. And this put this perspective that Smithfield is a wholly owned subsidiary of a Hong Kong-based pork company, reported $24 billion in revenue in 2019. So $24 billion in revenue in 2019 compared to $85. So was even if these animals were not sick and about to die, and if these activists had to remove super healthy piglets from Smithfield, it still would have been an $85 damage to them. But like I said, these pigs were liabilities. They were going to be killed, so Smithfield would have lost their money anyway, and they're definitely not going to spend hundreds of dollars on veterinary care to treat these sick animals. So the verdict is the first jury acquittal for direct action everywhere, which Sung co-founded in 2013. Going into trial, the defendants both face 2 counts of felony burglary, which each carry up to 5 years in prison, and 1 count of misdemeanor theft, which carries up to 6 months in prison, hence the 5.5 years they are facing. And one of the burglary charges was dismissed by the judge to a lack of evidence. So they would have had an additional burglary charge, which I believe would have made their sentences even longer, years longer. But still 5.5 years for removing 2 sick and dying piglets, worth to Smithfield nothing, but they claim it was $85. Anyway, Smithfield has an enormous amount of financial interests that are wrapped up in this, said a professor at UC Hastings Law who testified in favor of the activists. This professor said that Smithfield have an enormous amount to lose if the trial becomes public, which it has, and they cannot afford, or maybe they think they cannot afford, to give an inch to these people. Like they want to make an example of them, because I think Smithfield's thinking, wow, if these vegan activists rescued 2 sick and dying piglets from us, maybe other vegan activists will. This will be a huge problem. That's a fantasy of theirs. Anyway. The long-awaited trial was a test case for direct action DXA's theory of change. And I like this, which relies on a tactic they call open rescue. The group openly removes animals suffering on factory farms, vivisection labs, and other places where they're exploited for profit, inviting confrontation with the legal system. And the 2 defendants and founders of DXA aim to persuade a jury of their peers that it makes no sense. I agree with this. Even if you're not a vegan, it makes 0 sense to imprison people for saving suffering animals that are on death's door, thereby opening the door to a legal right to rescue. And I love that they're advocating this new concept into law, which was previously not present. Animals have the right to be rescued if they're about to die, just like a human. If a human's like locked in a house, another human can come and save that other human if the first human's life is in jeopardy. It makes sense. The same rights that humans have, animals should have in this case as well. And Sung said, against the advice of my co-counsel, because he was defending himself. He was an attorney and decided to represent himself, and the other defendants had their own attorneys. Pretty much all the attorneys I've talked to is saying, don't do this. I'm going to tell you exactly what we did on the night in question, because I believe people of this country and the people of Utah, he believes that they're going to make the right choice. And he said, animal rescue is not the worst part of us as human beings. It's the best of us. I agree. Today is a good day for somebody in particular, and that's Lily and Lizzie, the 2 rescued piglets. They're living their best lives in the sunshine right now, who are priceless. They're not worth $85, he said after the verdict. They got the right to be rescued today. And pretty much all animals, I believe, this might set legal precedent. There are billions of animals who don't have that right yet, and we're going to keep working for them. So it takes 1 save at a time, 1 or 2 animals at a time, to build up more precedent for this new concept of the legal right to save an animal who's suffering, who's needs care and quickly. So anyway, Sung and Picklesheimer, along with 3 other activists who have since pleaded out of the case, And here's what happened. Here's how it started. They entered the Circle 4 Farm, Smithfield's factory farm complex in Beaver County, Utah in 2017 to investigate the company's pledge to stop using gestation crates. So they're there to fact check. Smithfield said, yeah, we're not using these horrible gestation crates, which are described here are used to confine pregnant pigs in cages too small to even let them turn around. A horrible practice that's been going on for decades. And finally, enough attention's been drawn to the situation. And, people aren't hip on that. People don't like to see animals in such horrible conditions like that. So Smithfield pledged, hey, we're not going to use that anymore. But how are we to know, since it's not legal for people to go into these factory farms and record video footage and bring it out? That's a huge crime. So when the activists arrived at the massive facility, they found it filled with rows of pregnant pigs caged in the crates that the company had sworn to swore off. And how come Smithfield wasn't busted for this? I mean, they prosecute 2 vegan activists for rescuing 2 sick and dying piglets, FBI and everything. But Smithfield actually made a promise. I don't know if they broke a law, but they made a promise to not use these gestation crates. But lo and behold, the defendants found these being used still. They also entered a facility packed with farrowing crates, similar to gestation crates, but with just enough additional room to fit nursing piglets, where female pigs are moved when they're ready to give birth. The group found dead and rotting piglets inside the facility, as well as visibly ill and injured ones like Lily and Lizzie. Whenever I think about the condition Lily was in and the desperation we felt when we saw her there, struggling and so small, she was undersized and so sick, a little baby in such horrible, awful, brutal place. His son said he posted a video to Instagram. We just wanted to get her out. Here is a photo of actually one of the 2 piglets, which I believe is Lily. So a key part of the defense's case was that the piglets were on the verge of death. They were not pigs that Smithfield was going to use in any way in their profitable business. In fact, these animals were liabilities. They were no longer assets. I hate to describe living sentient beings like Lily and Lizzie in such stark economic terms, but that's how businesses and exploiters like Smithfield view these things. And to use their language, these were liabilities. Actually, the defendants did Smithfield a favor by removing the animals, because Smithfield would have had to use their own resources to take care of. And there's some really gruesome ways that they kill these sick and dying piglets, but it takes resources. Humans come and do this. It takes time. And the defendants did them a service. They removed these pigs, and Smithfield didn't have to expend any of their resources to do so. And just so happens that vegan activists took these sick and dying piglets and saved their lives. Anyway, Smithfield routinely throws sick or dead animals away. Had the animals remained in the company's possession, the defense argued they would have been worthless. Yeah, sick and dying and undersized piglets are not assets for Smithfield. But here, both piglets were a fraction of the weight of their litter mates when they were found at Smithfield. A fraction. Lily had scars on her face, as we saw in that photo, a foot injury that prevented her from walking and accessing food. Like, how sad. How can you leave that animal there if you are there recording video footage of the gestation crates that Smithfield's still using? Lizzie's face was covered in blood because her mother's nipple was shredded and bleeding. At the trial, veterinarian who cares for pigs and other farm animals testified that Lizzie's mother had a condition called hypogalactic, which meant she wasn't producing enough milk, which shows more reason why Lizzie was undersized and sick. A whole host of things working against her, and why she was about to die, like many other piglets, unfortunately, who had died, that they saw. They saw dead piglets, in addition to near-death piglets like the ones they rescued. Rosenberg said both piglets had vanishingly small chances of surviving at Smithfield. Exactly. The prosecution's $42.20 estimate of their value. That was the prosecution. That's Smithfield's estimate. I was wondering on my Friday live stream, I was wondering what is the value of a week-old baby pig on a farm like this? We now know it's $42, which comes from a USDA standard market price index. Has no relevance at all to these specific animals, she said. The veterinary care needed to keep them alive would have cost hundreds of dollars. She added that both piglets also had diarrhea, almost certainly caused by an infection, which made them a liability. And I use that word again, a liability to Smithfield. There's so many reasons why these animals were liabilities. She had another one, because here they could spread disease to other animals. In the pork industry, throwing away sick and dead animals is a cost of doing business. Isn't this sad? This is why vegans and animal rights activists like us are against animal exploitation. Animals are just seen as any other commodity. It just happens to be living sentient beings in this business, but another business, it's paper towels or something. You know, they're seen as the same thing, just assets to make the money, or liabilities which take away from their profits. Anyway, let's see. Okay, as a witness for the prosecution, Utah State Veterinarian Dean Taylor confirmed about 15% of piglets don't survive past weaning. 15%! I mean, considering they have, like, you know, hundreds of thousands of pigs, that's a huge number. I can't do the math off the top of my head. I don't have the exact number, but you know it's a giant number. 15% of a giant number is a pretty big number. At trial, his son attempted multiple times to ask Smithfield manager Richard Topham whether his claim that piglets have piglets have value to the company applies to those that they throw in the dumpsters. Like I said, these are liabilities. They have no value. But the prosecution are a bunch of lying, unethical wimps, and they objected to this reasonable question. Isn't that a reasonable question? If Smithfield's all upset and butthurt that their assets were stolen from them, $85 worth of assets, again, how is that an asset if these so-called assets were going to be thrown into a dumpster and requiring humans and other workers that they pay to put them in the dumpsters? That cost them money. That would have been more than $85 plus whatever they pay these workers hourly. But the prosecution objected, and the judge, who is a piece of work, didn't allow the line of questioning. I don't want you mentioning that again, he told. Like, why not? Why isn't that? I don't see how that is off base or anything. How is that an unfair question? If one of the charges here is theft, how is it theft in this case if you're taking animals that were going to be thrown into a dumpster? It makes zero sense. It shows you how the judge sided with Smithfield. I mean, again, that's just a reasonable question. Again, I don't care if you're a vegan, non-vegan, whatever you're into. It's a reasonable question. It's not like unfair or, it's just a very basic, simple question about what is the monetary value of these pigs. Anyway, and the judge also didn't allow their 2017 footage that they shot in the farm to be used, which is unfair because they should be able to show the context of why they stole these pigs, the horrible conditions of these pigs, their setting, and other pigs who weren't as fortunate who died already. Why couldn't they show this footage? Because the judge said it would cause an improper and emotional reaction within the jury. Well, it would cause an emotional reaction, but how is it improper if it's real? Like, the video footage wasn't doctored or anything. It's just showing what really was happening. If it's so horrific and so gruesome, maybe that says something about this whole practice of animal agriculture rather than these horrible vegan activists showing this radical footage. I mean, they didn't make it up. This is the reality of what occurs in there. But Smithfield's side still used the video footage as a major source of evidence, even though the defense couldn't show the video footage, referenced repeatedly throughout the trial. In July 2017, when DXE published the video and the New York Times covered it, Smithfield claimed that the video appears to be highly edited, even staged. Like, how do you stage this stuff? This is ridiculous. Sung later told The Intercept, the video speaks for itself. I don't know how we can fake a rotting piglet. Like, is that what Smithfield's suggesting, that these guys brought rotting piglets in with them? Like, all the piglets that Smithfield keeps there are well taken care of. They're healthy and robust and playing and having fun. But these horrible vegan activists brought rotting pigs with them in their backpacks or something. That's just complete speculation and nonsense. Anyway, Picklesimer, probably good I'm pronouncing it right, said they ultimately thought the judge's decision to suppress the video ended up helping the defense's case. It makes the jury feel like they're being treated like babies. And also, the judge didn't allow the use of industrial to be used in describing Smithfield's facilities. You couldn't say it was an industrial farm. The judge just keeps on siding with them, with the corporation. And here we're talking about an FBI agent, Chris Anderson, and this is hilarious. Anderson testified that approximately eight FBI agents had been on this case involving $85 of theft. 8 FBI agents. I mean, what's the last time you saw, as Hassan pressed him on, like, have they seen any other cases involving less than $100 worth of property had multiple FBI agents, let alone 8? And Anderson, the agent, said he couldn't think of any from personal experience. So anyway, and it gets even worse here. Direct Action Everywhere had sought the disclosures of the Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, who's been totally behind this case, prosecuting Direct Action Everywhere. The two defendants, and because what's really crazy here is that this Attorney General Sean Reyes has financial ties to Smithfield, so he's working for the corporation, not the people, arguing that he could have a conflict of interest because a Salt Lake Tribune story found that Smithfield donated at least $10,410 to his association in 2014 and gave Reyes a direct contribution of $500 just a couple years ago. So anyway, after the verdict, here is Smithfield's vice president. They didn't learn their lesson here. They're just still being all butthurt that the vegans rescued some sick pigs from them. This verdict is very disappointing, as it may encourage anyone opposed to raising animals for food to vandalize farms, said their vice president of corporate affairs. Following this 2017 incident, we immediately launched an investigation and completed a third-party audit after learning of alleged mistreatment of animals on a company-owned hog farm. The audit results showed no findings of animal mistreatment. Well, I mean, these guys had footage of gestation crates being used that you guys swore off. But yeah, you're a third party. Yeah, I totally trust them. Can't show the video footage in trial, but yeah, trust this third party. I don't, yeah, anyway. And this is interesting. Someone who testified in the case, Rick Pittman, a California-based turkey farmer, testified in favor of the defendants. His position likely came as a surprise because in 2018, DXE activists took his turkey from a farm in Utah and exposed cruel conditions maintained there, which were covered by the Salt Lake Tribune. And here's what he said. There's a difference between stealing a turkey and causing damage to the property or economic damage to me, or whether he's trying to rescue a turkey that's suffering. He added that talking to DXC has helped him improve living standards for his animals. Yeah, great point. He brings up what I've been saying the whole time. There's a difference between going to an industrial farm like this and being, destroying property, like destroying farm equipment or whatever, or stealing perfectly healthy animals that are actually worth something. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I mean, there's a difference between that and stealing, or removing animals who need treatment because they're about to die. Just the humane and compassionate thing to do. And leading up to the trial, this piece of crap judge I keep talking about ruled that the case could only focus on narrow legal issues of burglary and theft. He didn't allow the defense to discuss general animal welfare conditions at the farm. I mean, this is why they went there in the first place. So why that's so relevant, and not to allow them to even bring that up is just, again, ridiculous, siding with Smithfield. But he did allow them to testify to the health of Lily and Lizzie because of its relevance to the prosecution's claim of monetary value. At least they were able to say, well, these pigs were sick. I mean, what if they couldn't even say that? I mean, anyway, let's see. I don't want to keep going here. This is getting quite long. But I'm going to jump to the end here. In the trial that ended just this Saturday night, Wilcox, the horrible judge, barred activists from arguing a necessity defense, but they still raised related points in their successful arguments before the jury. Here it is. You call it rescue, but a hater saying, but it's really taken? Is this a hater, or is this a one of the prosecution attorneys? But anyway, the bottom line is no. Hung said, I can compare it to a dog in a hot car. They are in need of urgent care. You're not just taking something. It's not like, oh, there's something, I'm just going to take it. That's theft. But if you see, oh, there's something and it's in danger and it's on someone's property, but if I don't act immediately, it's bad things are going to happen. I'm probably going to die. Yeah, I compare it to a dog in a hot car. They are in need of urgent care, despite being in someone's car. So anyway, yeah, this is just crazy. It just seemed like I felt really, I had some really just I wasn't too optimistic, let's say, about the defendant's chances in this case, considering how the judge was against them, the state attorney general who's in the pockets of Smithfield was against them. But fortunately, that's not all there is to it deciding these people's fates. It goes to a jury who are not being paid off by Smithfield, and they can't control, they can't control what's being presented to them. That's the judge's fault there. But anyway, it's still common sense and reason prevailed. These people were not thieves, and they shouldn't go to jail for 5.5 years for burglary, trespassing and theft. And again, like, I'm not a legal scholar or a lawyer or anything, but like burglary or try to say trespassing, that's not typically a felony. I thought it's like maybe 6 months, a year or two or something, like 5 years, and theft of like $84, that's a misdemeanor. I thought felonies are like over like 1,000 or 10 something. It's a much bigger number than $100. So I just don't understand how these potential penalties of 5.5 years in prison justified the crime, trespassing and moving 2 sick and dying piglets who are a liability to this multi-billion-dollar Hong Kong corporation. It made zero sense. I talked about this on my Friday live stream, like going to serving time in prison, you're paying back a debt to society, like you took something from society, you got to pay it back. How does 5.5 years in prison, or 11 years combined, if these two had been found guilty, justify what they did? They trespassed, again, which I don't believe is a felony, and they took less than $100. I mean, couldn't they just pay them back the $84 or anything like that? I don't see how 11 years of time spent in prison between the two defendants would be an appropriate payback to society. They didn't harm anyone. Society wasn't harmed. Smithfield wasn't harmed. In fact, I would argue, like I said, they were benefited by having these 2 liability pigs removed from their possession, and they don't have to spend any more resources caring for them or disposing of them, which is horrible. So anyway, this makes no sense, but I'm glad. And despite all the odds stacked against the defendants, that common sense and reason prevailed, and I have a little bit more hope for humans, and that we aren't just all bad people corrupted by evil, profitable corporations like Smithfield. So anyway, guys, leave your questions and comments down below, and let me know if you enjoy this kind of style of video. I don't think I ever made one like this before, where we go through an article pretty much verbatim and discuss it, rather than let me try to reinterpret and mess it up. Like I said, they did a really good job here on the Intercept, and I didn't want to take any glory from it, so good job, Intercept. And hit like if you enjoyed this video, share this video, it's really important. Share it to all your animal activists and vegan friends everywhere. So until next time, remember, it doesn't suck being vegan.